Scurvy, traced by Mudflood Theology, for Mudflood Theology. Now, sailing is mentioned in the Bible. People in the time of Solomon and Hiram were taking 3-year trips to bring the right cypress trees or to build the temple. Oh, they got here digest after you ingest, as we keep the inside of our cup clean. Why my eye hurts? I like to know why. It seems clear why with a Y. Letter Y is at the end of the word, not I. Phonetically, they would sound the same. Why I oughta. I have a good mind. I hope it hasn't gone to waste. Not waste like WASTE, waste, WAIST. Wait, I mean the languages. Waste food. Waste the food you paid good money for before it goes to your waist, and you need a bigger belt of the hair of the dog that will make you ready to deal with the day after. You're going to deal with what they were talking about tomorrow, because looking forward is not on their agenda for you. The agenda for you is to persevere in what they have planned for you now. You have a first love for a reason, not only for a season. Gerald, how are you, man? Where are you from? You're only the second person I know that's named Gerald. That's There you go, man. I like that. Let's look at some of these things I got to jump through their hoops for. There's this. We'll be looking at some of videos, and maybe even sometimes I'll read something that's copyright. It's not only, yeah. Is there anything in here about you got to read copyrighted material correctly? I know I had some pictures. How about weird is the Salt Sea? The Great Salt Sea in the United States. Great Salt Lake, I guess, not sea. The Dead Sea is the Great Salt Sea. What do we got going here? So there's the thumbnail. Look at that. 75 feet of cord. I think it's crazy. It's as much of a mystery of how did it end up exactly, 75 feet. And they were adamant. It's 75 feet. It's red. So this is supposed to be the weirdest place using America data analysis. Good job. So 75-foot length of twine. When I looked up, because I didn't find out about it from Wikipedia. So I looked up these people, expecting to see them get a pat on the back for developing the first long distance communication, these Chimu device consisting of two resin coated gourds connected by a 70. Only one example has been found, and nothing is known about its originator or use. It's a phone. It's how kids used to do this with tin cans when I was a little boy. What do you mean you don't know what it was used for? I think they're lying or don't care. So they were a sophisticated culture conquered by some Chimu king around 1470. During its heyday, the city covered 2.3 miles. Once surrounded by thick star fort 30-foot high walls, they're still visible. They like to talk on the phone. It was a top-down society, they said. That's how they know they were organized as top-down society. Somebody was elite, maybe a priest. They know that because they said that's, there's canals and walls, and you're not going to do that unless you have a ruler. Ruler. Within the walls and secluded apartments of the Cedudelas, preserved stratification between the ruling elite and the middle working class. The NMAI telephone, Matto says, was a tool designed for an executive level of communication. Perhaps the courtier like assistant required to speak into the gourd mouthpiece from the anteroom. You got to keep that string tight. You know that string's got to be kept tight. This is somehow, swastika, swastika, also representative of the brain of, I think this would be the fornix, the fourth ventricle, or the third ventricle, with this maybe the fourth ventricle. This is a model of what's going on inside the body. No, it's not asymmetrical. They don't look the same on both sides. They're different. They are different. Anyway, this was something from, the telephone companies in 1909, 1911. They can still, I guess, come on your property at any time, but they didn't get the same kind of right of way. But when they were building these poles, telephone poles, you could come on their land and do it at any time. And I guess they didn't know that until somebody found this. Phones. The first phones in Colorado, 1879? That's crazy. Their history of the phone is, let's see, by 2002, most of the phones in the world were cell phones. They all started, I think, in 1878. They were already in Colorado by 1879. Antitrust lawsuits. 1913, another first antitrust lawsuit, or maybe the same one. It was 76. Come here, Mr. Watson. That's the name of that one of those first artificial computers that could play chess or something. Received a patent for his electrical speech machine. That's a telephone. By next 2 years, it was in New Haven, Connecticut. That's one of those utopian things. I'm pretty sure, like the havens, New Havens, that were, I think, in every province back then. 1885. Well, they miss all of this stuff in Colorado. And I guess they only care that New York finally got to Philadelphia. This is the only verse that mentions Raphael. It's in Tobit. But, oh my goodness, do the antediluvians and the people that are, into Enoch and everything else, do they have a lot to say about that guy? And they have so many names for so many different angels, and you realize that there's only two named angels in Scripture. 1 second, un momento, as they'd say south of the border most of the time. So Raphael, insanity of what they got going there. Presbyter John, millennial rate, David Vos. I started looking at this. It just got so silly. I don't even know if we're going to touch on it today. Oh, they're just crazy. What? The Apostle John is still alive. I mean, I haven't heard that for years, and now that's coming back around. Come on, this is all Mormon baloney. Well, let's see. Hola, Sergio. ¿Qué pasa? Oh no. We're all in that club, man. Not much. Just didn't do a show this morning and got very interesting things thrown at me. So I thought I'd better get the comprehende going. We'll read that later. My goodness, we're going to talk a little bit about scurvy. First off, I think you better get a little bit of a background. Where did they learn about the orange? How many different shades of orange are they? Is orange and what the
main ancestors? There's the mandarin, scientific name Citrus reticulata. Next comes the citron, Citrus medica. And finally, the pomelo, which, as its scientific name, Citrus grandis, suggests, is the largest of the three. These citrus ancestors were all happy to be fertilized by each other's pollen and so could exchange genes.
I wonder how close they had to be to get fertilized by each other's pollens. They're around the world now.
This gave us the oranges, a hybrid of the mandarin and the pomelo. Lemons, a hybrid of sour oranges and citrons. Limes are a citron-mandarin cross. And one of the most recent, grapefruit, the result of a hybridization that took place roughly 300 years ago in the Caribbean.
Isn't that convenient for the Mudflood short season times put out by Salt Paco do Re Mi?
This time between a sweet orange and a pomelo. Generations of farmers noticing these subtle differences and selecting desirable traits is the history of fruit breeding.
Desirable traits. It's kind of like breeding.
And the ancient wild fruit, mamang, narang, the fruit of ghosts, represent so many different things to the Garo people. Citrus indica is a fruit they use to cook with and make drinks. It's a medicine used to heal humans and animals. And it's a sacred plant. In some communities,
Walk, little bird.
Homogenization that's happening to so many foods around the world, a story captured in the history of citrus.
How are we going to maintain? You know, pomegranates, these things are mentioned in the Bible. I'm going to just keep rolling here. I hope you found that interesting because it's going to lead to scurvy. I don't even know. Is there something wrong with the stock market?
A lot of shock, also potential disruptions to prices and to supply, which is very much in the Federal Reserve's wheelhouse. I mean, from where you sit, can Liberation Day be compared to kind of the economic effects of COVID? Are they totally different, somewhat related?
I think each situation is different. There was COVID. There was also then, in the response to COVID, then there was high inflation, and then there was soft landing, and now we have.
Man, that soft landing. Whew. I like it when eggs only go up $2 a dozen.
New administration and changes in policies, and every situation, it kind of rhymes, but it's not exactly the same thing. And so in this situation, what we face is what I mentioned in my remarks is you actually have risks for higher unemployment and higher inflation, and that's difficult for a central bank because our tool.
Yeah, and when he's not thinking about that, he's probably getting an earful from a bunch of people saying, whatever you do, you keep abortion legal. We're all about it. You're a Mason. Who knows? These people can look so normal. Does this guy's feet reach the floor? Chimor, they are a people, an empire, political grouping, a culture. Around the time, they say about it, they disappeared 1,000 years ago. The Moshe culture, you can tell that's Peru. Big. A lot of interesting things, a lot of disturbing things here. like I said, it looks like they had the brain figured out, the heart, pottery, they had that figured out. I'm not sure if the AI knows that would not help him communicate, but they base it on some real things. Look at me. That's supposed to be a boat, a fishing boat with a nice hat. Oh, they're having gay sex. Not everybody did. Some people were into weaving really beautiful things. This disappeared 1,000 years ago. A sling, like they talk about in the Bible. That's a fancy one. From the 14th, 15th century, they say. How would they know? There's a coin or something, maybe an earring. So they lasted a while and then they didn't. But they did the phone. We're going to get a picture of the phone? Doesn't even rate a picture of their first phone. Man. But anyway, I guess they were worshiping the moon. Unlike the Inca, considered it more powerful than the sun. I wonder if these one of the people that, Cortez used to fight the Inca. Everything is going on. So I guess I have to show that there is a phone in the Smithsonian, nomadic cultural historian. His subjects leads them in many different ways. And then all of a sudden, the legends of the plumed serpent. They found a phone. This is what history writers and people got to do now. Those two desperate worlds somehow collided unexpectedly on a recent afternoon in the hushed, temperate, controlled precincts of the National Museum of the American Indian Storage Facility. Look what we found! Nestled in an acid-free corrugated cardboard container was the earliest known example of telephone technology. The eponymous ancient techie who dreamed it up. A gourd and twine device, they say, that was in use 1,200 to 1,400 years ago, tantalizingly functional. Too fragile to test out. This is unique. Only one has ever been discovered. It comes from the consciousness of an indigenous society without a written language. Huh. Well, I think that's interesting. Artifacts, recent past is equally mysterious. Somehow, no one knows under what circumstances it came into the hands of a Prussian aristocrat. A shadowy Indiana Jones type adventurer began excavating in Peru in the 1930s. He developed the digging bug at the age of 6. Oh, he caught the digging bug when he stumbled across evidence of the gold of the gods. Oh, wait, no, that's the route Eric von Daniken wanted to take me down. So there really is a thing. What do we got here? I guess I looked up something here. Under orders of AT&T's Theodore Vail, I wonder if that's Vail, Colorado Telephone Company basically merged with Rocky Mountain Bell Telephone Company and Tri-State Telephone Company from Mountain States Telephone in 1911. That's a big deal that year. But before that, telephone service in Denver, 1879, 161 customers. It was the 17th franchise in the nation to start saying, you guys want to have future cell phones? You want a future tracking device? We're We're starting it out right now. They had scurvy. So somebody's still in business. One of those Mountain State Telephone Telegraph, it morphed into something called Quest with a capital Q and no U. Hopefully, it doesn't have you involved in it. Harvard graduate. Okay. It looks like that he's added a ALE, the veil. And Henry R. Walcott went to Denver, met a saloon keeper. Hi, Sam. What's up? Got a beer? Yep. I also want to have 161 people that wish they had a telephone franchise like McDonald's from American Bell Telephone Company. Well, thanks for the beer. We'll be back with the customers. So they had to string up the wires themselves. They hired some boys as an operator. They did not go one ringy dingy. We don't even know, but not a lot of citations on this. 1881. Wow. We've studied Leadville. That's 2 miles high. Real soon after, Western Union owned Colorado, began a phone company in Leadville. Began phone companies, powerful transmitters, was able to offer things 100 miles away. Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Central City, Georgetown, Golden. Hey, what's going on, guys? I don't know. Let's call somebody. I thought everything was, what was that thing that we always see on the TV? It replaced the Pony Express. They sit there and it's the doggone Morse code telegraph. They had phones going on. Quest did it. These guys did it. Telephone company purchased the Leadville company in 1888. Boomer linemen. Let's go do it to it. Next thing you know, in the late 1800s, we're calling Utah, we're calling Montana, we're calling Idaho, Wyoming, telling them, hey, there was a gunfight at the OK Corral. Put it in your newspaper, everybody. And don't forget to eat lemons. This is that title. I guess I just wanted to see a big picture of it. I was expecting that the telephone people would get more rights than just being able to go on to your property to check the poles and the lines. But they didn't get any permanent, like the railroads. They got land, man, lots of it. Lake City, trying to get hydraulic, just another town stuck in the middle of nowhere when they banned hydraulic mining. That's a rabbit trail, went nowhere. Timeline of the phone. Okay. Well, we're missing the string phone. We're going back to 1667, though. There's an acoustic. Hey, there's one that was thousand years earlier, or at least 500 years earlier. I know what he's saying. Pick me up at 8 and don't be late. A Chantilly lace and a pretty face, ponytail hanging down. 1844. That's a neat name. Innocenzo Manzetti first suggests the idea of electric speaking. He said to himself, I wish we had a phone. And somebody told Alexander Graham Bell, or this guy, he's credited. What? Several sources say he did it? No way. Look at you. the United States, have we been just taking credit for a lot of stuff that the rest of the world is ready? That looks vaguely familiar. Tie a string on it. Hey, Antonio Mucci. A delay, Mr. Watson. That's Espanol. I forget what is hurry up in Italian. So anyway, this guy was good, huh? History of the telephone. All these things are way before Alexander Graham Bell. So Johann Philip Rees made a Rees telephone-like device. It was the first device to transmit a voice via electronic signals, and for that, the first modern telephone. Sorry, Antonio. He gets another patent. Mucci's not giving up. Elisha Gray. I want to make a phone. Thomas Edison. You don't know how to make a phone. I'll show you how to make a phone. Alexander Graham Bell. I got it. Vacationing on his parents' farm. He has a theoretical concept. He goes home. He makes the notes. He calls Mr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes and says, "Get over here. I want you to see this." I made up that last part. It's like they have a lot more people. If you study the history of television, who really invented the television screen, that's kind of a mystery. Look at everybody. It was a white man's world. There's the guys that are like, got his priorities straight. I'm not getting my picture unless my dog is in it. So scurvy. Nobody, we in the world of conspiracy, flat earth nation, golden age past, know that Hiram and Solomon sent men on 3-year journeys to bring back just the right type of cypress wood or redwood, whatever they needed, they would go get it. We hear legends of the Chinese, then some of the others. Didn't they make great big barges? Even the Romans made barges that they could go out to sea. They would have those people row their boats, and they'd have galley slaves, and I guess they didn't need, you know what it's reminding me of? How the people in NASA, when they didn't know there was a Van Allen radiation belt and you can't go there, just to make it more curious. Now, it didn't bother them, but once they found out about it, oh boy, you better watch out. We need limes. That's why they called the British sailors limeys. Man, making up history is hard. So James Lind, look at me. I'm the one that is going to study naval hygiene, but nobody listened to him. They didn't read his stuff until 100 years later, because doctors are going, no, they're only dying because they're constipated because of all the bad food. But evidently, scurvy is this deficiency disease resulting from a lack of vitamin C. Now look at this. Early symptoms: weakness, fatigue, sore arms and legs. If they don't treat you, red blood cells, gum disease, changes to hair, bleeding from the skin, death, infection, personality changes. It takes at least a month of little to no vitamin C. Well, maybe that would explain why they claim so many people died when they were doing that age of discovery. You gotta, I mean, it affects the bones and everything. So chili peppers, parsley, it takes vegetables, even potatoes, cabbage. It, I don't know what they were feeding, but after the reset, maybe they found some boats, found out how to make them, but that didn't mean they knew how to sail them or they were real sailors. They just weren't eating anything right. You hear the legends. Oh, the Roman soldiers marched 25 miles a day for 10 days in a row, and all they ate were handfuls of wheat, germ, and grain. That's what you need. Scott's 1902 Antarctic expedition used fresh seal meat and increased allowance of bottled fruits, whereby complete recovery from incipient scurvy was reported to have taken less than 2 weeks. There's something going on when God combined, made that declaration in Genesis chapter 9, verse 5 or 6. Could I be more vague? I could be more vague, but I don't feel like being more vague because I think I'm right. This is where God says you're not going to only be herbivore people after they get off the ark. Now you're going to be not carnivore. You're omnivore, choiceivore. Don't eat the blood. Okay. Verse 3. I was close. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything, but not the blood. And that's confirmed. That's what we have now in Acts chapter 4. One of the 4 things that was carried over from the Pentateuch to the Gentile Christians. That's what we are. Because it used to be that, and as I gave you, past tense, the green plants, I give you everything. Into your hand they are delivered. Anything. But don't mess with the blood. Don't shed the blood. The Crusaders in the 13th century, which doesn't exist, and they're, the Crusaders who said they wanted to fight the Muslims, who didn't exist. There was no Muhammad. That was another title for Christ. There was no Mecca. There is no cube. If I had a picture, I'd show it if I knew where it was. I might have a couple somewhere. Vasco da Gama. Let's see. Many people already, wait till you see some of these numbers if I have them. Did I get through all the pictures? Because I might have some about I thought I had some better ones about the same, but I guess not. Because there were some, it was like they sent out 1,800 of them and 1,200 came back. Here it is. Researchers have estimated during the age of exploration, scurvy killed at least 2 million sailors in what they claim in that 300 years. In this made up Vasco da Gama, or, out of 170 people, 116 died of scurvy. Out of 230, 208 for Magellan, all mainly due to scurvy. 1593, Admiral Richard Dick Hawkins advocated drinking orange juice and lemon juice to prevent scurvy. Well, I doubt it. that sounds like, like, well, nobody listened to me. That's probably written by his mom or something like that. That's like a funny thing that they say. If they introduce somebody and one person claps, the guy go, "Thanks, Mom." So 1614, Surgeon General of East India said, nah. He repeated the experience of mariners that the cure for scurvy was fresh food, or, if not available, oranges, lemons, limes, or another type of fruit. He was, however, unable to explain the reason why, and his assertion had no impact on the prevailing opinion of the science of the age that scurvy was caused because these people were constipated all the time. People were constipated after being Satan's release. So it had to wait and wait and wait. Recipe for scurvy. It's really there. So I think that we're onto something there. Let's see. Elon recovered the Democrats' deleted files. This is just something that I'd say, don't click on things like this. They're not going to release anything.
By accident.
Folks, they just discovered over 1 million illegal immigrants that have been collecting Social Security payments.
We all heard about that. It's not going to get fixed. What's weird is that geocentricity, that the Earth is the center,
and then you immediately get from this
center on the
to this insanely complicated picture. Well, let's first look at the inner planets so you better understand what's going on in those lectures. So let's look at Mercury first. Let's slow it down here. As mentioned before, we can easily see that Mercury is rotating around the Sun. Well, Ptolemy didn't know that. He thought that Mercury was rotating somewhere here, but this is very clear evidence of the heliocentric model right there.
If RJ wasn't busy, I'd go, RJ, are all the stars and stuff trapped in a dome? And he'd go, yep. Then I'd say, oh, well, that explains why they're doing all those funny motions and stuff.
It is revolving not around the Earth, but it's revolving around the Sun. The same goes for Venus. So here we see Mercury and Venus, the two inner planets, both circling around the Sun. It takes a slightly bigger orbit. You can see it creates beautiful patterns, and the pattern of Venus is especially beautiful as it creates a four-pointed flower that we'll see in a moment. So here we have the fourth side, and then we get the last one right here. So here we see that five-pointed flower.
This isn't going to work.
A good idea for a tattoo.
It's going to only almost work.
Outer planets. Here we have Jupiter and Saturn. We also have Mars, but Mars is a bit more complicated to understand. But in the end, it works in the same way. So what do we see here? We see that the motion, the retrograde motion of Jupiter and Saturn perfectly mimics the motion of the Sun.
That's cool.
That is because, of course, we actually have to view this motion as
Are you there yet?
The Sun.
No.
This is the actual motion of those two planets right here. And the fact that they move so similarly with the same rotation period in the same direction is also evidence for that heliocentric model.
Wait, so you're showing how it works with geocentric, with the Earth in the center, and then you're saying that proves heliocentrism? What about the retrograde thing?
Didn't you start this whole discussion by saying the Earth could be at the center? Did I? Earth revolves around the sun. Or does it? Oh, I guess I did. Where were you going with that? Reference frames. Those ancient Earth-centered models were a mistake. But the mistake wasn't that Earth was at the center. It was that they equated the center with importance. And we still kind of make this mistake sometimes.
Huh?
These days, we say the sun is at the center of the solar system. But what we should really be saying is that the sun is in control of the solar system.
No,
Newtonian
what we
physics
should be saying is that the Earth is at the center.
tells us that mass causes gravity, and that gravity is what controls a planetary system. The
Really?
sun contains 99.8% of the mass
Why
of the
don't we
solar
just
system,
skip a little
which
bit
means it's
ahead
always in
here
control. That can't be disputed.
and you
But
prove it?
That's fine, as long as the sun is still in control. What would that look like? Complicated. If we stick with tradition and put the sun at the center, the model is simple. All the planets, including Earth, orbit the sun in elliptical paths, just as Johannes Kepler imagined in 1604 CE.
That's the guy that stole the Ptolemy's geocentric model. and ruined
Retrograde
it.
motion is caused by the motion of each
retrograde
planet
motion.
relative to a moving Earth. To give you some perspective, I've stabilized the sky in this clip.
That
Our
away.
planet Earth is a giant rock tumbling through space.
Or
If we
we're
shift
in
our
a dome.
coordinates, though, the paths of the planets aren't so simple anymore. This isn't particularly beautiful, but it's physically accurate. And it's what we see from Earth. From this point of view, retrograde motion happens because of a complicated path relative to a stationary Earth. This is the point of view we actually have, where the sky moves around us. All we did was change the coordinates, and coordinates are just a tool. Which coordinates you'll want to use depends on the question you're trying to
What
answer.
exactly is that S-curve retrograde?
If you like science questions, you should check out
There's this other one that might, just give me a second, see if I can pull it up there. Now, I thought there was one that showed the S curve on the retrograde better. And once again, not seeing it. Huh. So that guy, that girl that claimed she had 4 days to live, that had the picture with Prince Andrew, I guess she's not dying. Did you guys hear that? Phantom Bridge. Well, it had to be this one then. Let's go back to that. You got the retrograde to here it is. So they're going to make this work.
Anyway, each of the 7 wanderers were on their own rotating sphere. It creates a mechanism that shows how they can wander. But it didn't take us very long to figure out this was wrong. All you have to do is watch Mars for a little while longer, and you'll notice something strange. At very regular intervals, it backtracks a little before continuing on its way. We call this retrograde motion. And the concentric sphere model doesn't explain it. There's no mechanism for it. I suppose they could have said a god steps in and does it, but that wouldn't really be the ancient Greek style. While they did believe in powerful gods, those gods were also messy, imperfect, and never said to be the creators.
Yeah, and apparently they died like men because they played the favorites. They were too into themselves.
Of the universe. Would you want a being like that messing up the perfection of nature? Which
Well,
finally
slow
brings us to
down and
Ptolemy.
speed
Back to the
up.
timeline. It took about 530 years, but a guy named
Okay, now here, there is this one thing I want you to hear about.
Ptolemaeus, or Ptolemy for short, proposed a fix. Rather than spheres, Ptolemy imagined planets revolved around the Earth on circular orbits. Although he didn't call them orbits, and a single orbit still didn't explain retrograde motion. A type of motion that 5 of the 7 wanderers exhibited. So he didn't stop at a single orbit for those 5. For each of the planets, Ptolemy imagined one large circle around Earth called a deferent. A point on this deferent revolved around the Earth, but that point wasn't the planet. The planet itself was on a second circle called an epicycle, centered on that point. Each planet orbited along its epicycle, while the epicycle orbited along its deferent. Tuned properly, he could explain retrograde motion.
Now you're about to hear something that's very important to you as a studier of the hidden history, the Mudflood theology. Did they have something that worked for quite a while? And that every other star studying, calendar making, Maya, you name it, they all came up with it's a flat earth and it goes like a swastika. How long did they say this worked?
Sometimes the planets wandered backward. It also explained why their brightness changed. Sometimes they were closer to Earth, sometimes they were farther away. So success? Not so fast. Watching a planet like Mars very closely, you'll notice another minor detail. It's not always going the same speed. For Ptolemy's model to work, the planets had to change orbital speed throughout the year. Unacceptable. So what did he do?
More epicycles.
Actually, no, that's a historical myth. The way the story is usually told is that Ptolemy added epicycle upon epicycle until it worked. Would that have worked? Absolutely. It's just Fourier series. It'll work on any shape. But that wouldn't be discovered until 1807 CE. Ptolemy didn't do this. His orbits never had more than one epicycle. It's a myth. But he was definitely in a bit of a pickle. He needed a solution, and he opted for one a little simpler than extra epicycles. Ptolemy zoomed in on Earth and asked himself, what if the Earth isn't perfectly at the center? What if it's off just a tiny amount? It's still center-ish, just not perfectly centered. Of course, this didn't go over well at first. But this tiny fix actually worked, at least to the precision they were capable of measuring at the time. In fact, this model was so good at predicting the motion of celestial objects that it was essentially the word of the gods for 1500.
It was how they did their astrology. It's how the deep things of Satan were figured out. They used this model, what they say is 1500 years. Where does that put 1500 years ago? Well, in between the time of the second destruction, of Jerusalem, the time when the people who in Malachi put together the book of remembrance, and then the 1,000 years of Satan, and then now a couple hundred years of our release.
Tiny fix actually worked, at least to the precision they were capable of measuring at the time. In fact, this model was so good at predicting the motion of celestial objects that it was essentially the word of the gods for 1500 years. Oh, the arrogance. But predictability alone does not make a model correct. Sun-centered or helium.
Yeah. The deal is they're not going to let you believe there's even a chance, right? It's full-time globe. Now, the dark side knows. They've read the Bible also. They realize there's going to be a narrow road. There's nothing they can do about it. They don't care. Well, I mean, they care, but they've got the world. And they're leading them down the wrong way. The Bible didn't warn the people back in the day, if you want to, come out of her. Come out of that beast system. Now, our advice should be the same thing. We could stay in it, hope for the best. Your 401k is going to be just fine. Or you can pray about it and see what's going to be happening. Because if even Scurvy and the true history of telephones are hard to get a straight answer out of these people, they're lying for a reason. The world is run by mafias. They're hiding the fact that since Satan was loosed, they set up white people to be in charge. The Mudflood was Armageddon. The golden age is past. Satan was in a pit for 1,000 years, waiting to join the beast and the false prophet, who were already thrown in there when Satan was captured, to be put in the pit for 1,000 years. Well, that's over. Then there was the reaping, because the wheats and the tares grew together in the golden age. So they started over. And now we've figured this out. orphan trains. We got crazy trains. And we have a calling that you need to be faithful to, because many people are called, few are chosen. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakenmain. Adios, amigo.